everyone, and welcome back to another video. If this is your first video that you happen to be seeing of me, hi, welcome. My name is Anya, but I go by the Bookatarian here on YouTube. So on to the video. If in case you didn't notice when you clicked on it and the title is not made completely obvious, I am doing my long-awaited, at least by me, book review of the second quartet named The Circle Opens by Tamora Pierce, which is entitled Cold Fire by, again, Tamora Pierce, following the main character Daja and her teacher, dedicate fire mage Frostpine, as they venture to a country that is north of Emelon called Nemorn, I believe is what it's called, and they are staying there during the winter season so that Daja can get some exposure to new smith mages and just smiths in general so she can learn more techniques and how different cultures intertwine their use of smithy and magic in general, and they are currently staying at the home of two of Daja's good friends from his school days, who are both married and they're living in their household as guests. And one day, Daja happens to see one of their twin daughters, I believe it's Jory, who when is being scolded for making a poor sauce with lumps in it because she likes to learn how to cook. At that time, she was cooking, and when the cook who had just admonished Jory turns away, Jory does some accidental magic and perfectly fix her sauce back to the way it is supposed to look. Daja, recognizing the instance of magic, realizes that Jory, of course, has magic, but doesn't know she has magic because, of course, the magic snivers, as they are so named in this book for some reason, have failed to identify Jory and her twin sister Nia as potential mages. So Daja, because of the rule of the previous two books, if you have read those books, you know that the finder of a potential magic student must either find a mage teacher to teach them with the same kind of magic that the students are showing, or thus take on the teaching themselves. Daja, of course, doesn't want to have to teach the twins how to do magic and control and meditation and whatnot, so she immediately sets out to search appropriate mage teachers in their area that would benefit the twins. So that is all I can say spoiler free. If you have not read book 3 of the Circle Opens quartet, I advise you to leave and come back when you have read it so to avoid being spoiled. Unless, of course, you want to stay. By which, be my guest. So on to my thoughts on the book, which I'm actually really excited. As I might have mentioned, I don't think I mentioned, I just finished this like yesterday. So the whole plot and like the second half of the book is really fresh in my mind. We start off and Daja is learning how to skate because as a big part of Nemorn culture, obviously their winters are so much longer, and during the winters the only or like the main way of getting between island to island is either by sleigh or by skating, and because the lakes are completely frozen over, it's usually pretty safe, especially when this book starts. All the water is completely frozen over, but Daja does not know how to skate because she is from the south and frozen over lakes is not something she's ever experienced, let alone skating for a need to get around. I just had an absolute ball watching Daja struggle so hard to learn how to skate as a little plot point throughout the entirety of this book. It made me smile and really miss ice skating myself. So anyways, that is a big part of Nemorin culture, skating to get around, as well as, for some reason, dyeing their hair. I don't know if it's just specifically the women who are kind of expected, if not encouraged, to dye their hair blonde, but a lot of the women are remarked upon as dyeing their hair blonde, and they tend to do it so often that their hair just ends up looking like straw because they've dyed it blonde so much. I also think Nemorn is my favorite setting of the 4 different settings that we get in this second quartet. So another funny running gag that always made me laugh was Frostpine and his battle with the ever-going cold. He is the biggest baby in the world, and it's so funny to see this late 40-year-old man be so irritated by the fact that it is cold in the place that he is staying. And the scene where he was, for all intents and purposes, naked in the kitchen fire in the morning, he was meditating as well whilst he was just sitting there naked. But once they had come down to start making breakfast for the rest of the house, they were a little bit alarmed to see a grown man sitting in the fire, completely naked. And so that moment also did make me laugh so much, and other instances in which Frostpine is riding in the sleigh, he's always bundled up so much that he is basically described as being a cocoon with fabric wrapped around him, and you can barely make out his face, and Daja just constantly teasing him about it is just also so good. And of course, we got to see their relationship develop even more. And as I previously mentioned in earlier videos of this review series, that I love Frostpine and Daja's um, teacher-student relationship the best, or a friendship the best, I should say. All she wants to do while she is in Nemorn is work on her new ability to basically summon living metal from her hand, which I didn't realize, or maybe I just forgotten about it from when I reread the third book of the first quartet, in which Daja is holding her staff while she's fighting the forest fire, and the metal cap on her staff, kind of gets melted and melds with her hand, so now it's just an ever existing part of her that she can make living metal, like from her magic through her body, and just use it for whatever. And so she makes jewelry this way and is easily making a living wage. And so when she gets presented with this need to have to teach the twins, at the very least, how to meditate, and she makes sure that that is the only thing she is required to do. And at first, she really doesn't even want to do that, but there is a necessary need for her to at least try to start teaching them control. And because of the fact that both of the workplaces that the girls choose for themselves to learn their specific magic. For Jory, it is the hospital with Olenica Potcracker because she is a cook mage, and Nia is a carpenter mage. Both of them are ambient mages, which just basically means they can summon magic that's already in a thing, or enhance spells of that sort. And that is why the mage finders, or magic sniffers, did not scent magic on them, because ambient mages are supposed to be the absolute hardest to find. Their parents had the magic sniffers look at them twice throughout their life, and they could not find magic either times. And first of all, magic sniffers? Why are they called that? This whole mystery behind the counterfeited coins, which is keeping Frostpine occupied through the entirety, or almost the entirety, of the book. We don't get to learn who is responsible for doing that. Like, all this work Frostpine put in, and Daja doesn't even get to know who done it. Like, we spend so much time mentioning it in the background, and I'm hoping this is gonna pay off soon, and it never does. Why not? Why don't I get clarification? And I wonder if it's going to play more of a role in the next series when it's more involved with the Empress, who, another thing, they kept mentioning an Empress of Nemorn, and I couldn't remember from what little I read of the Will of Empress before I put it down, if she is the Empress of Nemorn, because this is the first Empress that we've heard mentioned in this world is the Empress of Nemorn. So I'm thinking she is supposed to be the main antagonist, at least in The Will of the Empress, which is the first book in the third quartet. If so, that's pretty good foreshadowing. Anyway, so we've got the two teachers for the twins. Olenica Pawcracker I certainly do enjoy a lot. She used to work for the Empress, but she found that the general politics of working with nobles just kind of wore her down. She didn't enjoy it as much, And so she retired and opened a basically soup kitchen slash hospital in which you feed and how give homes to the sick and homeless and whatnot. So yeah, basically she left extremely selfish people and created this extremely helpful and good thing. And I was so very angry at Ben when he set fire to the hospital. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, I prefer Pawcracker over Kamak Oakborn, which granted Oakborn wasn't really too involved in Nia's training. Thankfully, I much prefer Arnon, and I was really happy when Arnon eventually got enough status to split off from Oakborn and start his own carpentry shop, and he invited Nia to come with him so he could continue to teach her, and that just made me so happy when we got to that point in the book that she's moving forward with someone who is more obviously like her. And so yeah, I think they were both very good for each other, as well as Alenica is very good for Jory and keeping Jory humble. So yes, now I'll move on to the main plot of the story, which is the fire setter. And in case you didn't know, it's mentioned like the second perspective change that Ben, who Daja meets early on in the book when he's firefighting that first fire. And so we see Ben immediately as this hero type character. But then the book goes and ruins it. I already knew from the very first perspective change, and even after like meeting Ben in general, that he would be the main big bad villain. Just because of the background story we got on him. He became so insistent on learning how to fight fire that he went away, like left everything after his family died and had like this almost unhealthy fixation on learning all he could about fire. And because Daja is so intertwined with her magic, fire is such a big part of her magic that she has a love and respect for fire as well, but it is more contained, though I can forgive Daja for not seeing how truly awful Ben's nature was, and Haluda Salt, the main investigative mage of the magistrate that was investigating the fire setter eventually, after the whole coin counterfeiter plot was resolved, again, with no actual resolvement. So after that, Haluda Salt gave more attention to this whole mystery of discovering who it is that's setting these fires, because they had reason to believe, with the nature of how the fires burned in some of the instances of the fires in this book, that they were being set, and Daja, of course, confirmed it, as well as Frostpine. He too confirmed that, these looked like they didn't just happen accidentally. Um, and so I knew, and also because I had read this book before, who the big bad was, but even if I didn't, the book straight up mentions Ben's name within like the second perspective change that you get with him. I can't blame Ben for how he turned out, but watching him descend from a minor arsonist who really believes what he is doing is for the good of his fire brigade people, he's just trying to test them to make sure that they are retaining the information that he has spent so much time and energy into teaching them. And he just gets worse and worse and worse. The fires get bigger because the thrill, like it is explained in the book, that excitement and the thrill of the crime isn't as satisfying the more you do it at just small levels, so he increases the sizes of the fire as he goes, set the fire at the council's mistress's house because the council refused to give him more money and aid or whatever to increase the size of training for his fire brigades because they need more help to sustain the fires. Yes, because he is setting more fires. That is why he needs more help, people. Daja really starts to think over and over again, something's just not right here, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Daja and Frostpine both say that so many times within the span of a few chapters that I'm just like, God, just freaking investigate it. Don't just sit here and pondering what it could be. Break into his house if you must. And somebody did. I think it was one of the magistrate mages because Ben mentioned something about them having an invisibility spell. And I was really angry and equally hurt, like with Daja, that when Daja realizes that her gloves were involved in the fire, and of course, only one person could have those gloves to do these things, and it was Ben. And so she was having such a hard time believing it because, of course, she has this hero worship mentality. And I was just like, my heart was hurting for you, girl. I was kind of hoping we would get a little bit of a redemption arc for Morcane to learn why exactly it was that she treated him and supposedly his brothers too so horribly when she was raising them. My only reasoning, I think, is because she lost her husband so young, so she was raising three boys by herself whilst maintaining a business. Still, it's not reason enough to, like, be okay with it. I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty much all my sympathy for Morcane and Ben. I was honestly very glad that when he was caught and sentenced to be executed by fire as per the laws of their government, I was glad that Daja just couldn't let him suffer the long suffering of dying by fire because it can be pretty slow. And it would be very slow, as there is some kind of magic suppressing the smoke from the fire, so he wouldn't die first of smoke inhalation before he properly felt the fire burning his body. And when all of the surrounding fire mages who had been significant to the story decide to spare him from that long suffering and make the blaze so much more intense, so he's basically killed almost instantaneously, it was the right thing to do. This has to be my favorite book of all of the Tamora Pierce's books that I have read, let alone of the world of Circle of Magic so far, granted. I still have not read the third quartet, the first three books of the third quartet, but I've read every other book in the previous two quartets, and this one has to be by far my favorite because of the in-depth look we get to see of the culture and the further development of the characters. And the plot was itself very interesting because although we know who it was doing these things, we couldn't exactly guess the form of what he was going to do or who would be affected by it, what the outcome of these fires would be, especially with the bathhouse. I mean, I was expecting it to be devastating, but I wasn't expecting the amount of damage that spread from the explosion after it exploded. I gave this book 5 stars upon the first reading. It's still a 5-star read upon the second reading. If you like this video, hit the like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all in my next video soon. Bye.